Arrogance diminishes wisdom. The Wonderful Weaver.
There was a young girl in Greece whose name was Arachne. Her face was pale but fair, and her eyes were big and blue, and her hair was long like gold. All that she cared to do from morn till noon was sit in the sun and spin, and all she cared to do from noon to night was sit in the shade and weave. And oh, how fine the fair things she would wove in her loom. Flax, wool, silk, she worked with them all. Then day by day, as the girl sat in the sun and span, or sat in the shade and wove, she said,
"In all the world there is no yarn so fine as mine, and in all the world there is no cloth so soft and smooth, nor silk so bright and rare."
"Who taught you to spin and weave so well?" someone asked.
"Nobody taught me, I taught myself. I taught myself when I was little."
"But it may be Athena, the queen of air, who taught you, and you just don't know it."
Psst, Athena? No, I'm way better than her. I could teach her a thing or two. She looked up and saw in the doorway a tall woman wrapped in a long cloak. Her face was fair to see, but stern, so very stern, and her gray eyes were so sharp and bright that Arachne could not meet her gaze.
"Arachne, I am Athena, the queen of air, and I have heard you boast. Do you still mean to say that I have not taught you how to spin and weave?"
"No one has taught me," said Arachne, "and I thank no one for what I know." And she stood up, straight and proud, by the side of her loom.
"And do you still think to say that you can spin and weave as well as I?"
Arachne's cheeks grew pale, but she said, "Yes, I can weave as well as you." "Then let me tell you what we will do," she said. 3 days from now we will both weave, you on your loom, and I on mine. We will ask all the world to come and see us, and great Jupiter, who sits on the clouds, shall be the judge. If your work is best, then I will weave no more so long as the world shall last. But if my work is best, then you shall never use the loom, or spindle, or distaff again. Do you agree to this?" "I agree," said Arachne. "It is well," said Athena, and she was gone.
When the time came for the contest, all the world was there to see it, and great Jupiter sat among the clouds and looked on. Arachne had set up her loom in the shade of a mulberry tree, where butterflies were flittering and grasshoppers were chirping all throughout the lovely day. But Athena had set up her loom in the sky, where the breezes were blowing and the summer sun was shining, for she was the queen of air. Then Arachne took her skins of the finest silk and began to weave. She wove a web of marvelous beauty, so thin and light that it would float in the air. "No wonder that the maiden boasted of her skill," said the people, and Jupiter himself nodded. And she hid her face in her hands and wept.
"Oh, how can I live, now that I must never weave again?"
And she kept on weeping and weeping and weeping, saying, "How can I live?" Then when Athena saw the poor maiden would never have joy unless she were allowed to spin and weave, she took pity on her and said, "I would free you from your bargain if I could, but that is a thing which no one can do. You must hold your agreement never touch a loom or spindle again. And yet, since you will never be happy unless you can spin and weave, I will give you a new form so that you can carry on your work in neither spindle nor loom." And then I touched the Arachne with the tip of my spear, and she was turned into a spider. There was a young girl in Greece whose name was Arachne. Her face
I didn't know where to start.
Oh my god.
She looked up and saw in the doorway a tall woman wrapped in a long cloak. Her face was fair to see, but very stern, and her gray eyes were so sharp and bright that Arachne could not meet her gaze.
Arachne. Oh. When the time came for the contest, all the world was there to see it, and great Jupiter sat among the clouds and looked on. Arachne had set up her loom in the shade of a mulberry tree, where butterflies were flirting and
Flirting?